Welcome to the video on data analysis. So first we'll talk about the measures of central tendency, which are your mean, median, and mode. So the mean is the average of the data, so you'll add up all of the data points and divide that by the number of data points. Your median is your middle value, so if you arrange your data in numerical order, then the middle value is your median. And then your mode is the response that occurs most frequently. So if we look at this data here, we can rearrange it in order. So we have a 1, 2, 3, 3, 5, 6, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 data points. So to find our mean, we'll add up all of these numbers. So the sum of your data would be 50, and the number of data points is 10. 50 divided by 10 is 5, so your mean equals 5. For your median, you want to find the middle point. So you would start at one end and cross one out. You do that with both ends until you get to the middle. And if there are 2 points in the middle, you'll find the average of that. So the average of 5 and 6 is 5.5 because 5 plus 6 is 11, and 11 divided by 2 equals 5.5. So your median is 5.5. Finally, your mode is the number that occurs the most often. So if we look here, we have 2 3s and 2 6s. So this is going to be bimodal, meaning it has 2 modes. So your mode would be 3 and 6. So those are your measures of central tendency. Next, we have our measures of central tendency when we have groups. So to find the mean of your group data, you would find the midpoint of each group. So for this one here, your midpoint would be 5. Your midpoint's 15, 25, 35, 45. So these are your midpoints. And then you'll multiply your midpoint by the frequency. So the frequency of this first one is 2, so you'll have 5 times 2. We'll have 15 times 10, 25 times 4, 35 times 3, and 1 times 45. Then we'll add these totals and divide it by the total number of values. So 5 times 2 is 10, 15 times 10 is 150, 25 times 4 is 100, 35 times 3 is 105, and 45 times 1 is 45. So we'll add those up to get 410. So that's the total, and then we'll divide that by the total number of values. So the total number of values would be the sum of this, which is 20. So our mean equals 410 divided by 20, which is 20.5. So that's what your mean would be. And then the modal class is the interval with the most data points. So there are the most data points in ages 10 to 20. So our modal class is 10 to 20. So that's what you would do with your central tendency for groups. Now we have our measures of dispersion. So your interquartile range, or IQR, is the spread of the middle half of the distribution. So it would be quartile 3 minus quartile 1. Your standard deviation, which is the sigma symbol, is the average amount of variability in your data set. So this is your average distance from the mean. Your variance is your standard deviation squared, and this is your average squared deviations from the mean. So to calculate your standard deviation and variance, you would enter your data into L1, like shown here on the right. Here are some numbers. And then you'll hit second calc 1 var stats. So that's one variable statistics. And then this is what would show up. So your sigma value right here, that would be your standard deviation. And then if you squared that, that would be your variance. And later on, we'll talk about our quartiles, which are going to be here, and then you'll scroll down and see your other quartiles. But you can find your IQR with your quartiles as well if you have your Q3 minus Q1. So when you scroll down, that's where you'll find Q3. So the effect of constant changes, if you're multiplying your data by a constant, all of your different measurements will be multiplied by that constant. So your mean, median, mode, range, IQR, standard deviation, and variance will all be multiplied by that constant. When you're adding and subtracting a constant to the data, however, your mean, median, and mode will change by that constant, but your standard deviation, variance, IQR, and range would stay the same. So your measures of central tendency will have that number added or subtracted, but your measures of dispersion will stay the exact same. So now we have our quartiles of discrete data. So this is what I mentioned earlier with the calculator. You could scroll down and find your quartiles. So to calculate your quartiles, you'd do the same thing as when you're calculating standard deviation. You would enter your data into L1, hit second calc, one variable statistics, and then scroll down to Q1, your median, and your Q3. So your median is also your Q2. And then your max is technically your Q4. So there are different methods for finding quartiles. So technology might give you a different answer than finding those quartiles by hand. And that's why your numbers would differ. So now we have our first IB practice question where the calculator is allowed. It says, find the mean, median, mode, range, IQR, quartiles, standard deviation, and variance of the following data. So we're looking for our mean, median, mode, range, IQR, quartiles, so we'll put Q1 and Q3, our standard deviation, which is this symbol, and then our variance, which is this squared. So our mean, we need to find the sum of all the data and divide it by the total number of points. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 points. So it's going to be the sum of those 10 points divided by 10. So the sum of the numbers is 416, and we divide that by 10 because there are 10 numbers. So our mean is 41.6. For our median, we need to put the numbers in order. So our lowest number is going to be 23. Then we have 24. Then we have 33, 38, 41, 45, 45, 51, and 53. And then we have 63. So our median is going to be our number in the middle. So we'll start from each end and work our way in. So our middle numbers are 41 and 45. So this is going to be 41 plus 45 divided by 2. So that gives us 43. Our mode is the number that occurs most frequently. And we only have one number that shows up more than once, and that's 45. So our mode is 45. Our range is our maximum minus our minimum. So 63 minus 23, which is 40. Our IQR is going to be Q3 minus Q1. So our Q1 we can calculate on the calculator by entering our values into list 1 and then doing second calc, one variable statistics. So our Q1 equals 33 and Q3 equals 51. So our IQR is 51 minus 33, which equals 18. Our standard deviation, as given by the calculator, is 12.01. So our variance, which is our standard deviation squared, would be 12.01 squared, which equals 144.24. So these are your answers to that question. Now we have our second IB practice question. It says, a gardener measures the height of each of his plants. Find the mean and mode of the data he collected. So the mode is going to be pretty straightforward because it's just our modal class, so whichever one has the highest frequency. So that would be 45 to 60 centimeters. Our mean, on the other hand, is going to require a lot more calculations. So we need to find the middle of each of our groups. So this would be 7.5, 22.5, 37.5, 52.5, 67.5, and 82.5. We'll multiply those numbers by the frequency. So we'll multiply it by 23, 14, 34, 45, 28, and 6. So 7.5 times 23 is 172.5. 22.5 times 14 is 315. 37.5 times 34 is 1,275. 52.5 times 45 is 2,362.5. 67.5 times 28 is 1,890. And 82.5 times 6 is 495. So our sum of all of those is 6,510. Our total number of data points is the sum of our frequencies, which gives us 150. So our mean is going to be 6,510 divided by 150, which equals 43.4. So our mean is 43.4 centimeters. And that's what you would do for this problem. So in summary, our measures of central tendency are our mean, median, and mode. Our measures of dispersion are our interquartile range, our standard deviation, and our variance. The effect of constant changes are when you multiply data by a constant, all the descriptive statistics would be multiplied by that constant. When you add or subtract a constant to the data, the measures of central tendency will change by that constant, and the measures of dispersion will stay the same. And for your quartiles of discrete data, there are many methods for finding your quartiles, so your technology might give different answers than finding the quartiles by hand. But if you have a calculator, you can use your calculator to find those quartiles. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching.